What's up, everyone? Friedemann Finn-Eisen from Holistic Songwriting. Yep, sorry, this is not a video. It's audio only, but if you don't want to spend an hour on YouTube listening to this, just download it from the description below and listen to it on your way to work, because there's some really great information in this, so make sure you don't miss it. I am being joined today by fellow YouTuber Clifford, who you may know as the Pop Song Professor. Cliff will be doing some lyrical analysis today, while I will focus on the music as usual, and hopefully between the two of us, we'll figure out what the hell happened with Taylor Swift's new image. Where did it come from? Where is it going? And what has changed musically and lyrically? Enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pop Song Professor podcast. I'm your host, Clifford Stummy, the Pop Song Professor. It is so great to be talking to you guys again, and today I am bringing back a special guest, Friedemann Finn-Eisen from the Holistic Songwriting channel and of the Song Addict, or sorry, not the Song Addict. What was the title of your book? For some reason, I can't think of it. I know, I'm going to read it, so, and it really sounds exciting, but for some reason, I can't remember the title.
It's The Addiction Formula.
Okay, that was my second guess. But,
very good, very good.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to be reading it myself, and he just came out with an audiobook version of it over on Amazon. We'll have links for all of that stuff in the description. But Friedemann, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much.
And guys, today we are going to be talking about Taylor Swift's new album, Reputation. This is definitely a hot topic everywhere right now. She already sold more than 1 million copies of it, and it's not only is it redefining pop for her, but I have a feeling that in some ways it's going to redefine pop for just kind of the industry as a whole. So, I guess let's go ahead and jump into this. Friedemann, what were some of your initial thoughts about the album?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be able to return to Taylor Swift because Taylor Swift was the first artist that I ever did on the Artist Series for her album 1989, which I also analyzed back then. And I'm really happy to be able to return and just talk about the many different changes that she went through in the last couple of years. So my first impression with this is, it's a different sound for her. It's still clearly her. The writing is still basically Taylor Swift, and she still uses what I call the Swift line, which is like a download that you can find on my website. We can put that in the show notes. But she still uses kind of the same writing styles and the same writing techniques that she used to back in the day. But the overall sound has definitely shifted from a major sound to a minor sound. If you like,
okay,
yeah, that's like the biggest change.
Yeah,
I've
so
noticed,
like
sure.
Darker and heavier, more intense.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not Taylor Swift who makes these decisions. I'm sure that she had a big part and a big say in this change, and I'm sure she got sick and tired of playing that same old damsel in distress, and going to prom with some nerd or whatever. I don't know. So I guess she also wanted to try out something new, and that's very common in the music industry. Like, she's not the first to ever do this. I'm just thinking back to Miley Cyrus and also Ariana Grande, even though that change didn't hit the headlines as much. But Ariana Grande also went from this cute little girl, Disney Channel star, to a dangerous woman.
Yeah,
so,
and Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Miley Cyrus too. Yeah, like everybody.
Yeah, and I think, it's in the case of Taylor, or in the case of all of these girls, it's like they can start off as these cute little girls, but then they hit a certain age, and so then their bosses or the record companies just go like, okay, we can't sell this forever. Like, at some point, she's going to have an image shift. And I think it's just only natural. Like, from a marketing standpoint, it makes total sense, right? Like, she's hit that certain age, and then you make 1989, which is a nostalgic album looking back at her youth, or her like childhood at least. So that's a way to like still keep that going for a little bit longer, but it's already saying like, okay, I'm a little bit older now, but I'm looking back at this time. So that is like a good transitional phase for her, I think, was 1989. And now she's reached like her, her adult phase, if you will. And like now all the sexiness comes out and the darker sides of her and like the more color and stuff like that. And it's not as pretty, not as bright, not as happy, not as cute anymore.
Yeah, and you really see that particularly with songs like, you kind of see, I feel like Reputation was hinted at in a song like Style or Bad Blood, and then maybe even Wildest Dreams not Wildest Dreams, that was definitely more nostalgic, but particularly Bad Blood, I felt like was kind of the precursor to Reputation because it was very, very intense, and it was about her enemies, which she's had songs about her enemies before, Mean from kind of her country phase. She's always sung about it. But Bad Blood, she's like, I'm going to murder you. I'm going to straight up kill you. And then on Reputation, it's like she's going to follow through on that promise.
Yeah.
with just a ton of the songs. They're all about, the way I tell people, they'll ask me, is Reputation any good? And I'll say, well, if you like songs about her new boyfriend or about her getting even with the media, you're going to love it. If you don't like those topics or can't relate with those, you're probably going to have to just, enjoy the music and not think about the lyrics too much.
Yeah, good one. Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess then, are there any other big changes that you saw coming into this? Because if we have nostalgia, if we kind of have the simple, wholesome goodness in some of our country music, and then I felt like in Red, it was more focused on just having a good time in the moment and kind of experiencing things, and it was kind of like a 19 to 21-year-old sort of, 22-year-old, because it had 22 on it, just having fun, being a young adult, nostalgia in 1989, and now in Reputation. What would you say, musically, is the big themes here? What has changed?
The biggest shift for sure is going from major to minor. Taylor was always someone who wrote a lot of her songs in major keys, and on this new album, there's let me check. Wait, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 songs that are in minor, which is something.
Whoa! Out of 15.
Yeah, out of 15. So that's a lot of songs. And if you look back on 1989, I'm not sure there were any songs in minor. I'm sure there were, but maybe 2 or 3. Maybe it was 5. But predominantly that was a major record. And this record starts off with all of the minor tracks. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks are all in minor keys. Whether that's Dorian in the case of Endgame or just a regular minor scale. But it's all just setting a tone for the entire record. And then you have sort of the middle portion, which sort of moves to the major keys, which is the tracks Gorgeous, Getaway Cars, King of My Heart, and then it's 2 minor songs, Dancing with Our Hands Tied and Dress, and then it ends on a major note as well. This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things and Call It What You Want, and New Year's Day, of course, the closer of the album. Those are all in major again. But
that's what I was going to ask, is Call It What You Want, because I felt like lyrically, Call It What You Want was her closest tendency to be like her old self, just to be have a good relationship and be happy in it. She's singing about how sweet and romantic everything is. It feels to me like the minor songs touch, just off the list you told me, the minor songs seem to be about those new themes that people are kind of oh, really, that's where you want to go, Taylor? She became super sexual in Dress, and then those first 6 songs, like you mentioned, or the first 7 songs, a lot of those are about the media and about her getting even with people, and it seems like the new themed songs are in minor keys for the most part, and the ones that kind of touch on who she really is or feel more wholesome and sincere seem to be in major keys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because usually it's the major songs in which she gets out that Swift line, that certain formula that she's used on 1989 a bunch of times for writing melodies, and maybe we could get into what it is in just a second.
Yeah.
But so the songs that I'm seeing right now where she used that line would be, let me see. For example, Gorgeous uses it in the verse. Getaway Cars uses it in the verse and chorus. King of My Heart uses it. I don't know where, because I didn't write it down here. I think it's in the chorus. Dress uses it in the chorus, I think. And Call It What You Want uses it in the chorus and bridge. And those are, almost all of those are major songs, except for Dress, I think. It's usually those songs when she kind of gets back to her old self, and when she unpacks all those old formulas that she's been using for a long time. So, but basically, let's get into what the Swift formula is. In my video, in the first episode of the Artist series, I talked about how she uses one-note melodies a lot, right? So she uses melodies that are just on one single pitch that sometimes maybe revolve around that single pitch. Maybe she'll hit a couple of notes that are right next to it, instead of going da 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 da, she might go da 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 da, something like that, and then with more rhythm, obviously, because one-note melodies, to keep those interesting, you have to add a little bit more rhythm to them. Mm-hmm. So it's basically one note, but maybe she hits some notes, neighbor notes, we call them in counterpoint. So with this here, with the Swift formula, how it works is it starts off with a one-note melody, and then after about 2/3 or sometimes a little bit earlier, she's going to hit a higher note, she's going to do a jump up to at least a third, sometimes a fourth, or sometimes even a fifth, or sometimes even an octave. Then she has a descending line that goes down. So that's something that she's really done quite a lot, and you can hear it on 1989 on a lot of the songs. And I have a whole PDF on that. If you want to download that, we can put that in the show notes, where I explain the whole thing, and I take it apart and show how she used it in the different songs in 1989 as well.
1,000 times please.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, interesting. So and then that typically accompanies a lyric, right? So if that's the Swift line, what's the Swift line in Gorgeous?
I wrote down it's in the verse.
Okay.
That's all I wrote down. So I'm not exactly sure where that is. I know it's in the verse somewhere.
She says, "You're so gorgeous, I can't say anything to your face, because look at your face, and I'm so furious at you for making me feel this way, but what can I say? You're gorgeous."
I think that first line is the one-up melody, and then you have these two shorter lines, and those I think are like the jump up with the descending line. So she does that twice in that case. So she has a one-up melody and then two descending lines that first jump up and then go down. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you felt like she was, when she played the major keys in her songs, she was using the Swift line, and she was getting back to herself, whereas in previous songs, she's done the Swift line more in minor keyed songs?
No. The Swift line was usually always major songs, and it was almost always the same formula. Start in a one-up melody on the first scale degree, so start on the key, and then you jump up to some other note and move down from there.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that was like her melody for 1989, and almost all of those songs, as I said, were major. So yeah, she's used that there a lot.
Gotcha. Now, we were talking beforehand, and if you're cool with us getting into some of the specifics here, we were talking beforehand over Facebook about how you were saying that like she had stripped down choruses, right?
Yeah.
And the verses tended to be a little bit more intense, whereas the choruses sort of relaxed. And I thought that the song that most made me think that would be the song that I probably...
Look What You Made Me Do.
Yeah, well, it was more like Ready For It. Because it's like the soup. Like even if you watch her performance of it on Saturday Night Live, it's like the super intense. She's got like this hardcore, like sort of hip hop dancing almost, and the lights. It's all very dark, and there's a lot of red light. And then she moves into the chorus, and all of a sudden it's like she's singing the chorus from Wildest Dreams, where it's very like high pitched and very like smooth, and it has a good melody, and it's very like wistful and dreamy, and it almost has that like that nostalgia feel from 1989. But did you see that kind of replicate? Like you're the one who mentioned it in the first place, so I mean, you want to like what about that?
You know, I think it's a new move that Max Martin's team is trying out, because obviously this new record was also produced by Max Martin, so the team that is behind pretty much all of the big hit songs out there, and you know, who's also produced The Weeknd and all these other artists. I think it's something new that he's trying out. You know, Katy Perry would be another artist that has done this in the past couple of hit songs that she's put out, or you know, bigger singles that she's put out at least. It's this idea of having like this really low energy chorus, which is unusual for pop music at this moment, because Max Martin was the one actually who brought the high energy choruses into pop music, you know, because he's essentially a metal guy, right? He was a metal singer in a metal band.
Oh, yeah.
And so he brought the epicness of those metal songs into pop music. And that's how he really transformed pop music. So you got those big, super high energy choruses. And I wouldn't say like that we don't have high energy choruses on this album. Like there's plenty of them, but like for the two main pieces that they've chosen to release as singles, Ready For It and Look What You Made Me Do, Look What You Made Me Do. We have these really low energy choruses, or like these low energy sections. Ready For It has this like super low bass drone that kind of reminded me of. There's a German artist called Casper, and he has a song called Lang lebe der Tod, LANGLEBEDERTOD, and check that song out. Like it's pretty much the exact same thing. It's not just the same rhythm, but the snare comes in at exactly the same moment. So I thought that was interesting that I could see that happening as an inspiration, kind of, because it's a really interesting song, and maybe they heard it somehow and chose to like use it for this. And I'm going to talk more about inspiration and you know, the difference with inspiration and stealing a little bit later, because I think it's a really important point here for this album as well. So I think that's just something new that they're trying out, because the 2000s and early 2010s in pop music were so much about having like the biggest chorus that you could possibly make, and making that like a huge anthemic dance chorus, you know, like party rock anthem and stuff like that. And so now they're trying to do something new, and I think this is what they've come up with so far. And I'm not sure if it's going to stick, because it is a pretty wild paradigm shift if you think about it like that. But I think what they're trying to do now is just do the exact opposite and have like these really low energy choruses that are highly focused and very, very intense, what I call implied tension in the addiction formula.
Okay. Yeah, and what you're saying too with some of the earlier louder or like intense chorus, or the high energy choruses that we heard maybe over the past 5-10 years or so reminds me of what the guys over on the Switched On Pop podcast call the pop drop, where like the verses will simmer and the pre-chorus will start to get a little bit more intense, and then all of a sudden like you just have like this, like the synth just does this like crazy thing where it gets really loud or very deep or very high all at the same time, and all of a sudden you just like drop into this like almost hip hop sort of, I guess, intensity or rhythm. This is a bad idea. I should not be trying to describe music. That's your job. I'm going to just stick to lyrics. But the pop drop, like listen to songs that were, especially in the past 5 years, and just notice like how they transition into the chorus. Like it's this distinctive shift where it just gets like the synth just does a lot of things. But
yeah, so the music basically often drops out, and then we have like for the chorus, like everything comes back in at full force. Yeah, we get that a lot.
And in this album, like you're saying with Ready For It and Look What You Made Me Do, it's like there's no pop drop. It's a little more anticlimactic, but it starts to soar a little bit. I feel like, especially in Ready For It.
Yeah. But I think like what it does really well is it still keeps the attention going. Like it's not like it's boring because of that. Because I feel like the chorus is very intense. It's very exciting, and it's hard to turn it off. It pulls all your attention towards the song, and I think that's done really, really rather well. Even though that's a difficult move to pull off, especially that transition from the chorus. Like that super low part from Look What You Made Me Do, where she just basically does her version of Kelly's Milkshake, because that's what it sounds like to me. And then she goes back into the verse, and it's almost the same thing. It's almost the same energy level, but she manages to pull that off, or the producers managed to pull that off really well. And it actually reminded me of something like I heard Max Martin say in an interview once that he writes his choruses based on his verses. And you can hear that in, for example, E.T. by Katy Perry, where the verse is basically the exact same melody as the chorus. That's the kiss me, kiss me, it's that song. And the verse is exactly that same melody. And here it's pretty similar. Like the verse is very similar to the chorus, and that ties it together really well, makes it more memorable. It ties everything together,
Yeah, it gives it like cohesiveness, makes it feel like a whole song that fits together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also something I just want to say, one more band here, because these artists like keep popping up when I listen to her album, to Reputation. I'm thinking of all these bands that keep coming up with every one of her songs. Another one for this one would be Backstreet Boys' Everybody, which I think Max Martin was also involved in. He was definitely part of that whole Backstreet Boys thing. I'm not sure if he wrote Everybody. I think he did. But it's like that's another one. Like that groove from that song really reminds me of Look What You Made Me Do. It's kind of similar in that fashion, I think. Like it's really it has that 90s thing programmed into it, especially the programming of the drums and the really loud hi-hats. That's the thing that was really popular in the 90s. But so I've been talking for a really long time now.
Oh, no.
I want to hear your side of things. So what have you managed to find out about this new album? How has her tone shifted from 1989 or from her previous records to this one? What have you found out?
Okay, real quick, very important. It looks like Max Martin was involved with Everybody. That was back when Dennis Pop was like
his mentor.
His mentor. That's back when he was like really big, and I think Max Martin helped him out on that. But anyway, back to less important things than Max Martin, because really, in the music industry today, there's nothing more important than Max Martin. But, so a couple of things that I found out. One, what you said about the choruses being low energy and the verses being high energy really stuck with me, because typically when I analyze artist lyrics, the verses will typically tell a story. The pre-choruses will help transition from those concrete stories into more abstract themes, and then the choruses will capitalize on the themes, and typically the bridges will look at everything from a completely different angle or show some side of the story that's been neglected up to that point.
Which is, by the way, just a quick interlude here, which is especially true for country music and folk music, which have always been storytelling genres.
Oh, so true.
And so especially for someone like Taylor, this should be like her formula that she uses for writing her songs. So go on.
Dang it, I didn't even think of that. That is such a good point. She comes from the country genre, and so she's still taking some of those country songwriting tactics. Because, I noticed that more than most people, she does that in this album. Interesting. Okay, I'm learning stuff as we go. That's good. But with the whole like slow burning choruses, it made me think that typically choruses are where artists will get down to kind of really what they're trying to say and who they really are. And so when you hear a song like Ready For It, where the verses are very much the story of intensity and like, hey, you kind of were a jerk and now I'm going to get back at you, stuff like that. And then in the chorus, she starts singing more about, we're going to, well, let me just pull up the lyrics. I should have those up. In the verse, she says, "Knew he was a killer first time that I saw him. Wonder how many girls he had loved and left haunted." And so she's kind of like playing around with this bad boy here. But in the chorus, it's like she feels, well, in the verse, she feels like she has to play a part. But in the chorus, she's like, "In the middle of the night in my dreams, you should see the things we do, baby. In the middle of the night in my dreams." And so it's like she reveals who she really is. And so it's like she's putting on this facade in the verses where she's being somebody else. But then in the chorus is where it gets back more to like the songwriting sound of 1989. You feel like she's not only revealing herself lyrically, but she's revealing that the old Taylor is still alive, because that was the big question that everybody was asking when this album dropped: is the old Taylor dead? And I would say that no, she lives on in the choruses, particularly.
Yeah, Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because she's dead.
Well, or because she's writing a chorus.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was one of the big things I saw. Other ways that she's changed, we had the sexiness of dress. This was the first album, I think, where she swore. Yeah. So we have Damn in Don't Blame Me or Delicate. I can't remember which one. And then she also mentions alcohol for the first time, and she mentions it a lot. She had never sung about being drunk or drinking alcohol before, I believe, and then in this album she mentions it several times. And so she's definitely changing and growing as a person. The one thing too that struck me,
and sex, right? Was sex a part of her earlier albums? Like this is the first time I think that I've noticed that she's like, dress is. I think that the line in the chorus is something like, "I put this dress on just so you could take it off," or something like that. That's the first time she's done something like that. Is that right?
Well, Wildest Dreams was the closest she ever got to that I know of. Because yeah, you're right. Usually it was very, very, quote unquote wholesome. But in Wildest Dreams, she talked about like your clothes all over my room. And when I heard that, I was like, who is this Taylor? Like, this is very, very odd. But then I listened to Dress and I was like, oh, well, this is the direction she seems to be going.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of that Bruno Mars song. What was that? Like that Michael Jackson ballad? Versace on the Floor. Exactly. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. So I guess themes that I saw were just, this aging, more willingness to do things that not necessarily all of her audience's parents, because her audience is very young, would approve of necessarily. This willingness to jump in and be a little bit more hardcore. She was willing to take things for herself more. So like, Look What You Made Me Do. She interestingly takes things for herself. Like she's going to take revenge, even though she's always been very reserved. But on this album, she finally was like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to come after you guys. And so in Look What You Made Me Do, she kind of gives into like this darker version of herself. And so it feels like she's sort of employing a form of escapism and kind of not only dreaming about, you and me, baby, on our island together, like in Ready for It, but she's also kind of daydreaming about if she were this kind of like vengeful, terrible person, like what she would do to these people. The funny thing is that she sings about taking revenge a lot, but I don't think she ever takes any actual revenge on anybody.
That's what I thought as well. Like, that's when I first saw the video to, what was the first one? The first one was Look What You Made Me Do, right? By the way, I think that's an absolutely marvelous video. I love the production quality on that one. I think it's just one of the coolest music videos of the past 10 years. Maybe Gangnam Style is like, is up there with Gangnam Style, but it's...
Nothing beats Gangnam Style.
Absolutely incredible. So, and what you're saying right now makes a lot of sense to me, because I never thought, when I saw Look What You Made Me Do, it never felt like she's changing her image and she's becoming this really dark artist now. It felt more like, you know what? I kind of want to try this out, and I'm still that same old cute little country girl at heart, but I kind of want to try this out, and I want to try out the dark masks, and I want to be like, I want to try out 50 Shades of Grey, I want to do that dark stuff, but it's not really me. It's like when she did Bad Blood, and it was like all fun and games, and it still feels like it's all fun and games, because Look What You Made Me Do wasn't all serious. Like, she was making fun of herself a lot, and she showed herself in different versions of herself at the end of the clip. One of was the country version girl, and then she had like a zombie version of herself and stuff like that. And it was kind of a comment on herself, I think. And so that's why I thought that video was very well done and kind of really connected the last album with this one really, really quite well.
Yeah. I think if anybody ever tells me that Taylor Swift has done something that's not classy, or if she has herself doing something not classy in a music video or singing about it in songs, I just kind of laugh, because I think, if anything, like, she's just the epitome of classiness. And even though like Kanye West and all these people are going to diss her, and they're going to actually do like rude jerk things to her, she just typically handles everything just super, super well, and she'll sing about it.
Yeah, she has a good team.
Yeah, like her PR people are amazing. But she is like super self-restrained, just because. I mean, I think those people probably have great teams as well, but they still do dumb things that are like legitimately mean. But Taylor Swift, for the most part, just seems to sort of rise above it all.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been her image, kind of this like holier than thou kind of, not in a bad way, but like it's always been kind of her image of like this angel, you know, that she's just perfect, and she's like the epitome of the female sex and everything. Like, she was also often called a feminist, and she said things that pointed towards this direction and stuff like that. And also, by the way, feminism is maybe another interesting thing that we could talk about. Have you found anything about feminism in your lyrics? Because I'll give you some time to think about that,
sure.
because I found some hints of that in the music. Earlier, as said, like, I have all these associations when I listen to this album, and I named Backstreet Boys. I said Milkshake by Kellis, and I don't even know if that's how you pronounce her name, but Delicate, for example, and several other songs as well had like this harmonizer effect on them, which reminded me very much of Imogen Heap's Hide and Seek.
Oh,
and
that
band. Wasn't the... Yeah, really great. And she's a fantastic artist as well. Like, I met her in Berlin, and she's fantastic. So she used that harmonizer, and that reminded me really a lot of Imogen Heap, and she used it in, I think, 3 or 4 of the tracks on this album. What else did I have? I had, as I said, Casper. Fever Ray, at the beginning of Endgame, she has this really strange section when the hip-hop drums come in, these distorted hip-hop drums, and it reminded me a little bit of Fever Ray. Like, there's a song that she just released called To the Moon and Back, and it has that same kind of nasty, blurted out kind of quality to it that you usually only find in alternative music, and it sounds almost like she's imitating someone whose first language isn't English, which is true in the case of Fever Ray. So I thought that was really interesting. And what I think it is so I personally don't see this as stealing, because, you know, I write music myself. If that was stealing, I would be stealing all the time. So obviously I have to defend myself and say, look, no, this is not stealing. This is being inspired. But what I think it is, it's not just being inspired. I think what truly happens in those sessions, and I've been through those sessions many, many times with my own artists and own projects, and I've been in those meetings, is when you have an artist and you like have a new album, or you start a new album, a completely new artist, you just go through what's already there, and you're like, so what do we want to portray this artist as? What's the image we want to portray this artist with? And so you just go through all these playlists of songs that everyone just kind of likes, and they say like, hey, we want a little bit of, you know, the sort of nostalgia from the Backstreet Boys, and we want a little bit of that edginess of Fever Ray. We want a little bit of the dark underground stuff from Casper. We want a little bit of the cool exploring creativity and of Imogen Heap. And that's kind of how it works, I think, is that they just had this long list of tracks, and that they used probably during the mixing process as well to just sort of reference back and forward. So that's kind of what I think. In terms of the feminism, what I found really interesting was on some of her tracks, she does this thing where she's almost talking instead of singing. And I got an email from one of my students who asked me about that in, I think it's the second verse of Look What You Made Me Do. She has this part where she just starts almost like rapping, or it doesn't really sound like, it's that part. They call it a shout verse.
It's like she starts chanting almost.
Yeah, exactly. And she did the same thing in 1989 on the Haters Gonna Hate song.
Shake It Off.
Shake It Off, exactly. In the bridge, she does pretty much the same thing. So that is a theme that keeps returning on this album as well. It really reminds me of, do you know Amanda fucking Palmer? Like, that's what she calls herself, of the Dresden Dolls. It's not what I'm calling her, it's what she calls herself.
You must really hate her music. No, I don't think I've heard of her.
So she's this really independent artist, and she had a band called the Dresden Dolls, which I think was just drums and piano and her singing. She's this really fascinating personality, and her marketing, if you want to call it that, is absolutely fantastic. She gives away all of her music for free, and she's this really fantastic person. And her way of singing is very rough, very raw. There's no auto-tuning. It has that very feminist sound. Just like, you know, Orange is the New Black is a show that is also just very rough. It's very feminist in that way, you know, because it's so rough. It feels real. It's not portraying women as these really pretty goddesses and just angels, but they're portraying them as women, as people. And so, and I think that's the same thing with Taylor Swift, that she's always been portrayed as this angel, unquote. And now this new album is kind of
Yeah, yeah.
Stepping away from that just a tiny little bit. And some songs have these parts that are not tuned, where we don't have any auto-tuning going on, and where she sounds a little bit rougher and a little bit more like a real person and a little bit more grown up.
That makes me think, too, and I hope nobody that's listening will take this in the wrong way, but she does adopt, in some cases, almost like a masculine intensity, or what some might call a masculine intensity. Whether it should be a masculine intensity or not is definitely a different conversation. But when she says, "I don't like your kingdom keys, they once belonged to me," it's like she's getting rough and she's ready to fight, you know? And I think that up until, I don't know when, but probably recently, that's sort of like this intensity and this emotion that you would probably hear more like from a rap artist, who are historically and mostly male. And so for her to come in with that sort of like brutal intensity, yeah, I think there is an element of feminism there, because she's saying that the sound that might have been considered masculine for so long, or this intensity or this aggression, I'm more than willing to adopt this and use it, and it works just as well for me as it works for any guy. Absolutely.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, I found, you were asking me about feminist themes, and I definitely thought I found some. I will say that for the most part, even though she has some of those masculine tones at times, I would say the heart of who she is on this album, particularly in those choruses, is still very feminine. I think she's very good at being a feminist while being feminine. And so, like, I don't know if you heard about that court case recently where she sued a guy who sexually harassed her while they were taking pictures. He like grabbed her butt or something.
I didn't.
She told security to pull him away or something. And so she sued him for $1 because of that. And he lost his job. And so he sued her back for defamation. He lost that. She won her $1 and made her point. And of course, he'll never be able to work again. She's been doing things recently that I think are very empowering to women, and she's fighting like a good fight for certain like social changes that need to occur. There were several things in the album itself that made me think about that. I don't think there was anything where she was like pushing any particular ideas, but it felt like the whole attitude was kind of like, you can't push me around. It does, like, you can't touch me, sort of like she's a very, very powerful person anyway, but she definitely emphasized that power in the album. And the one song that made me think of that, I had that pulled up a second ago, and then, oh, surprise, surprise, I clicked away from it to look at look what you made me do. Here it is. No, dang it, that's not it. It was, here it is. Okay, I did something bad.
It's like a Charlie Chaplin sketch.
Exactly. Like, I can't even keep track of all these tabs. I have like 10 open right now. But in I did something bad. She says, I never trust a playboy, but they love me. So I fly them all around the world, and I let them think they saved me. They never see it coming what I do next. This is how the world works. You got to leave before you get left. And I don't know if this is so much feminist, but it's at least empowered. I wish I might make it feminist. I need to study that a little bit more, but I let them think they saved me. And so you kind of see her rising above this narrative of like this wholesome guy coming in and helping this, overworked, idolized celebrity kind of like be herself. She's letting them think that they're coming in and being like the masculine one in the relationship, when really she's the one with the money, flying them all around the world, and really supporting them, and they think that they're so cool. So I felt like that was kind of at least a nod to a feminist ideology.
Yeah, I think so. What's also interesting about that song is this is, I think, the first track that she's ever used like excessive autotuning on. Is it? I think so. I mean, I don't think I've heard another one of her songs that was so obviously autotuned. I mean, like, almost all pop artists are autotuned, if you, with the few exceptions.
I was reading Max Martin loves to do this, and they mostly all do this where they'll record several takes of the same like hook, and then they'll like take syllables and they'll glue them together for the best sounding hook or something like that.
Oh, dude, that's been done for 30, 40 years already. Wow, like, that's like common practice. It's totally normal to record like the same thing over 100 times. What people imagine recording sessions to look like is the artist comes in, sings the track 3 or 4 times, and then that's kind of it. You take the best take. And that's maybe how it was when we still had tape, when we were working with that. But ever since digital, it's usually like, can we hear that H again? Just record an H. we'll just paste in that H or that T sound at the end of the...
I want more feeling in the H.
Seriously. I mean, that's really how it is. I'm not even joking. It's like, can you sing a T for me so I can put that T here at the end of that phrase? Wow. I like that phrase, but we just need a little bit more of an ending to that phrase. So we need that T at the end there. And that's really how it is, It's being pasted together from hundreds and hundreds of tracks.
Wow.
And so It's pretty crazy, but that's how it is. You want the perfect take. Obviously, what are you going to do? Yeah. I just read an article on Taylor Swift this morning, complaining about her new album, like as many people like to do. It just was sort of mocking that she probably had to do like 100 tracks of her just like laughing just the right way for that one moment in the song. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's just totally normal. All your favorite artists are doing that as well. It's just, that's how it works. You want that perfect take.
Wait till you see what they did for the H.
Exactly. Wait till you see what they did for the H. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It reminded me, you were saying that there was excessive auto-tune, but yeah, I'm sorry. What were you saying? Sorry to interrupt.
I mean, it's just the first time she's done anything like that. And also like the features with Ed Sheeran and Future on Endgame, which I think is a really cool song, by the way, is also like, I mean, she's done a feature with Ed Sheeran before. I mean, she's done some rap stuff as well on Bad Blood. But it's like, this is the second track on the album. That's like her opening track, because everyone knows Ready For It. That's the first track on the album. Everyone knows that. Most people who are going to buy the album are going to skip forward to the second track because they want to hear something new. Do I like that second track? They're going to buy the album. So it's pretty crazy that second track, like that's the trailer for the entire album, is like one that has like a rapper on it, which is so not country and so not that cute little image that she's been portraying for so many years.
It goes back to Bad Blood, where Kendrick Lamar, I think, even starts rapping before she starts singing. And it really feels like Bad Blood even more is the precursor to Reputation.
Yeah. And I mean, that was a mega hit, of course. It wasn't as big as Shake It Off, but it was a mega hit, Bad Blood. So I'm sure that they just wanted to do something more in that vein again. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting track. There's distorted hip-hop drums, which is also kind of unusual for her. She's done like a little bit of distorted drums on Shake It Off as well, but it's like this is definitely a new level of distortion, which is kind of unusual for her. Her melodies are kind of atypical. Like she uses one-note melodies on the 5 and the flat 3, which is, it's not the first scale degree, so that's not super typical of her. But the chorus is, again, it's a one-note melody on the first scale degree. So there she goes back to her old formulas. The whole song is in minor, in D Dorian, which is, I think, interesting. It's not just straight up minor. It's not just straight up Aeolian. It's almost like an R&B chord. It's a D7 sus2, I think. And then goes C, G. And then I think the second run it goes D7 sus2, A minor G. So the chord progression is also one that you wouldn't typically hear in like these really cutesy country songs. It's really something that you would hear more in a Weekend track or, something even more R&B, like, whatever. So I just thought that was interesting that this song really just opens up the whole spectrum of what Taylor Swift was to like, look, here's what Taylor Swift also can be. Possibly. And here's like, you're going to find out more as the album continues, but here's like a first impression of what Taylor Swift can actually do.
Yeah, I like how you say that too. Like there's a little bit of who she was, but like this is kind of where she's going, and the music itself shows that change. I think it's very easy for most listeners, and if you read gossip blogs are garbage, I hate them. But, you read them, and they all focus on the lyrics, and they say, oh, Taylor Swift said this about this. It must be about Tom Hiddleston. This must be about Calvin Harris. This must be about, whoever. I could care less. But none of them look into the music of it, and I think that your skill is so valuable, and obviously we need to have you on the podcast more to talk about, like, how the music fits with the lyrics and how... even while I'm finding traits of her previous music here, even as she tries to change, you're finding those too, like in the musical fingerprints that you're finding here. And like you pointed out, country music tells a story, and she tells a lot of stories here, and that's a huge focus of this album. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, sometimes I get accused on YouTube for just interpreting things into things that aren't really there. But I'm like, these are big teams of people, and they're super smart. They know everything that's going on in the industry. These are like masters of their trade. It's not like they're doing this just willy-nilly. They have a plan going into this. They know exactly what they're doing. So if you're seeing hard lighting or soft lighting on an actor's or artist's face, that was intentional. Right? Yep. So there's just talking about lighting, there's a big difference in how the old Taylor Swift videos were lit and the new videos. The new videos had much more harsh lighting, like definitely harder lighting, which is a symbol for more character, which is obviously something that they're trying to distill in the minds of people, that she's this character. She has a lot of character. And back in the day, it was just all very soft. Everything was well lit. There was a lot of light. And so that was like just to make everything look more like prettier and just shinier and glossier, that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't remember which song it was exactly, but I can think of several music videos from that era that were very, everything just seemed to have like this glow to it. and now the lines are sharper and harder.
Christmas lights. Candles, yeah.
One other thing I wanted to point out for listeners as far as the lyrics go, and then I want to open it back up to you, and then we should talk about whether we liked it or not, is I noticed that she does this thing on this album, and I haven't spent enough time looking at previous ones, though I think it stands to reason as well. But looking at the song titles that she has, there are several that are like these complicated metaphors that she plays on throughout the entire song. So Endgame, Getaway Car, King of My Heart, Dancing with Our Hands Tied, and New Year's Day particularly, like it's this metaphor for something deeper. And then in the song itself, she tells kind of the story of the metaphor. And then in the chorus, she explains exactly what that metaphor is about. So, I mean, taking Dancing with Our Hands Tied, which I was writing a blog post about that just last night. She sings, I love you in secret, but the world's going to tear us apart in verse 1. And then in the chorus, she goes back to the metaphor itself and says, but we're dancing with our hands tied. And she says that a lot of times. In Getaway Car, she sings about, it was the best of times, the worst of times. I wanted to leave you, I needed a reason. So she sets up the story. And then in the chorus, we hear her say the words getaway car a lot as she sings about the actual getting away from an old relationship into a new one that's not quite so healthy. And so she does this thing where her songs are very like simple metaphor focused, where she'll take just this word picture and she'll focus the entire song around just this word picture. And I think a lot of artists do this, obviously, so it's not anything new. But I think it's something that she does particularly well and that she did several times on this album. Some artists, I think, will get a little bit more, autobiographical focused, where they'll tell like more stories. Like, I mean, I think of like Hotline Bling, where there's not really a metaphor there. It's just like a recurring theme. But with Taylor Swift, like she draws this imaginary picture in your head and capitalizes on that. And I don't know if that's a country style narrative or anything. She does something similar with Bad Blood, Shake It Off, not so much Wildest Dreams, but Out of the Woods for sure. And I think, so it was cool to see like that come back to this album, just from things that she's done in the past. Those are good songs because it's easy to connect with that metaphor, but it also makes you keep listening a little bit because she doesn't always explain exactly what that metaphor is, and so you have to listen several times or go read the lyrics or look them up to figure out exactly what the song is about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I don't think it's really a country thing. Country really is more about storytelling, kind of like rap music in a way, although rap music doesn't really tell a story, it just talks more details, I guess. That's probably the biggest difference. The use of swear words, obviously. But I think this is really a pop thing. And, to me, pop means you take everything away until there's just the bare bones of it left. And that has to be just really, really good. And so that's the same thing with the lyrics. You just have one really good thing and make that fantastic. And I've seen her talk about this in interviews about her writing process, actually. She has a notebook, I think, or she just types it on her phone. I'm not sure anymore. And whenever she gets an idea for a lyric, she just writes that down, and she has this whole notepad with just ideas. Notepad. I'm sure it's not a notepad. She doesn't carry on like a big tape deck and records all of it. I don't know. She's probably just got a phone or whatever. But
she might have done it for nostalgia when she was, or for 1989 when she was being nostalgic.
Exactly. Just get out a BlackBerry and just
BlackBerry.
BlackBerry, a personal computer. So she So that's kind of how she works, and that's how I work as well. Like I have this whole database of just ideas, and whenever I get to a new song, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I want it to be about. Now, what can I connect up with that? And I just go through my files, and she does the same thing. She just goes through lyrics, and she's like, okay, so this is my topic. Maybe I can find a lyric that would fit well with that. And then she kind of puzzles the lyrics together, and it's really quite a lot more puzzling than a lot of people think, I believe. A lot of lyricists, it's really just puzzling. It's finding lines that sound cool, that kind of go with the subject. And so that you can hear that in her songs, and you can hear that in almost all songs, that it's really good line after really good line. There's not a lot of fluff in there,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I remember reading somewhere that she actually did something exactly like that with Dress, where even though some people are going to say Dress is about her new boyfriend, she actually came up with the lyrics for it over a year ago. But that doesn't mean it's not still about her new boyfriend, if anybody cares, which I clearly don't. But yeah, I mean, so she can repurpose those lyrics, but it sounded like she did exactly what you're talking about, where she had some lyrics that she wrote down a long time ago, and now she's like looking through her files and finding those. That's really interesting. See, I really want to be a lyricist, and so I need to start like doing some of these strategies. I need to create a file. I'm going to do exactly what you said. I'm going to go get my BlackBerry, and then I'm going to get like a paper file system, and I'm just going to sort through it with like a little Dewey Decimal sorting category or something. And then, all right, there's
awesome.
some good words
Get
I thought of.
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, a spreadsheet, perfect.
No, absolutely. I think that's really vital for becoming a good creative person, if you will, is to have like a big database of ideas, because good creative people. I mean, I'm really bad in live situations. Like if you're going to ask me like, analyze this song quick and do it on the spot, I'm like, I don't know, I need a little bit of time. So I need the time. I'm not like creative, like just like that, I need a little bit of time to come up with my ideas. And if you just sat me down in front of a white piece of paper and told me to write a hit song, I couldn't. What I need to do is I need to look at my notes and find something that inspires me. And if I'm inspired, then good stuff can come out of my brain or my fingers or whatever, But that's kind of how it works. It's just that we have a system in place to help us get more creative. And I'm reading this really fascinating book at the moment, which might be interesting for you as well, called The Net and the Butterfly, which was recommended to me by Linnea, who produced my audiobook. And she's this really great producer. It was really fantastic working with her. And she recommended this book to me. And it's all about being more creative and having breakthroughs and forcing breakthroughs. And a lot of the recurring themes are that the great minds of history, like Thomas Edison and all these people, they all have this kind of similar approaches to creativity. I mean, they spend a lot of time thinking about the problem, but what was really important as well for them was that at certain moments they just would let it go. Albert Einstein didn't have his breakthrough by just thinking about it. I think it came to him in a dream or something like that. And for a lot of creative people, it's like that. Like we get our best ideas under the shower, on the toilet, in the car. That's like the moments where we're distracted, where we're really thinking about nothing, that idea just comes to us. And that book explores that a little bit further, and it's talking about the different command centers in the brain and how those work together and how we can activate both of those centers, like the logical, strategic one and one that is just kind of working for us creatively in the background. It's really fascinating.
The Net and the Butterfly?
Yeah, The Net and the Butterfly by Olivia... what's her name? I love, she wrote the charisma myth as well, and I love her. I forgot what she's called. Olivia something.
I take it the net is like the strategic putting together part of your brain, and the butterfly is like the creative happy part.
Exactly. That's what I've gathered from it. Yeah.
All right.
Very good.
All right. I'm going to take your advice. And is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I had a couple more things to say actually about her growing up. And there's two more things I wanted to mention. One of which is reverb. To all the producers out there, the use of reverb on this album is really quite fascinating. Especially if you look at Look What You Made Me Do. It has like this really roomy reverb. Usually we're used to like these big halls with these huge reverb tails, or something very dry, more 90s-ish, where we didn't have a lot of reverb. Since now we're finding our way back into reverb, and with The Weeknd we had reverb became cool again. And I think this album here in particular is really interesting how it uses reverb, because it's not something you would hear every day. Like, it's a lot of the songs have just really interesting use of it, especially like with how it works with hype. That's another term from my book. Basically with setting energy levels. It's really interesting in how it's used to like focus you on certain things in the music. For example, Ready For It has this really dry and close verse, and then the chorus is super wide and feels very far away. That's the kind of stuff that's been being done with reverb, and I think it's spectacular. It's, for any producer out there, it's definitely worth checking out. This whole album is really mind-blowing in terms of just how reverb is used. Another thing I wanted to mention, unless you have anything to say about that.
No, I'm just taking that in.
Okay.
It adds an effect to the lyrics. I'm trying to think about what kind of effect it would have on how we interpret the lyrics. But I would say they probably sound more intense or more epic, probably, when you listen to them with reverb.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It sounds more epic the more reverb used, technically, or more alternative as well. Like depends on the kind of reverb that you are using. Or it sounds really focused if you take it out, if you don't have that much reverb, or a very dry kind of roomy kind of reverb. The other thing that I noticed with this album, and maybe I saved the best for last here, I think, while Swift is still using a lot of one-note melodies on the first scale degree, she's now expanded her, the range, I guess, to the 4 as well. And that's a note that I've associated with The Weeknd before and Drake. It's kind of like a very colorful, I would call it a black note. It's like something that a lot of black performers use because it's very colorful. It's still kind of cold in a way. It's very closely related to the 5th, which is like the coldest interval that we have. It has a very interesting quality to it. And she uses that interval in or that interval, that scale degree, in several of her songs. For example, Don't Blame Me, she uses it in the verse. That basically is a one-note melody revolving around that note. She uses it in Delicate, which is the song right after it. So that would be song 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There she uses it in the verse and the chorus. Then she uses it again 2 songs later in So It Goes, in both the verse and the chorus. And then, let's see, she uses it again in Dancing with Her Hands Tied in the second half of the chorus. She uses it in the chorus of Dress. And I think that's it. But that's a big shift.
Still significant.
That's really a big shift. And it's, to me, what it's suggesting is, again, the interval, like the root note, basically. Like unison, if you want to call it that, if that is an interval. The first scale degree is just this really, don't want to call it bland, but it is a very neutral, very warm, very vague kind of interval. And it's just, it speaks to a lot of people. That's an interval that's just made for the masses, because no one can disagree with that interval. Like the most basic sound that you can make, basically, in melody writing.
That guy that everybody likes.
Yeah, exactly. And the 4...
It's everybody's best friend.
Yeah, and the 4 is not even part of the tonic triad, which makes it a lot more challenging to listen to. And I mean, we've heard it a lot now with The Weeknd, who uses it in a lot of his one-note melodies. And he just released a new song that also uses the 4 in a one-note melody. And I just think it's really, really fascinating that Taylor now uses some more challenging notes as well in her songs. And she uses a lot of, like in her minor songs, she uses a lot of the flat 3, like in Look What You Made Me Do in the chorus, for example. Or where else? Let's see. For example, in Dancing with Her Hands Tied in the verses, she uses it, or Dress in the verses, she uses the minor 3, which is technically, if you think about it that way, if you think of minor keys as just shift in a major key, like it's just, if the song was in major, if you interpret it as a major song, she's still singing the first scale degree. So it's not really that far away from what she was doing before. It's kind of the same note that she's singing, just the chords are different, if you will. I think that's really interesting. But the 4 especially was really something that really surprised me on this album, because that's a completely new sound that we really haven't heard from her before.
Yeah, I remember the difference between those videos, because I remember watching your video about Taylor Swift and About the Weeknd, and you mentioned that 4 as being something like in sharp contrast to who she was.
Exactly.
We heard that on The Weeknd. And so for her to jump into that...
You know what I think? I think she saw that video and she was like, well, I'm going to show them.
Well, screw this.
Yeah.
Max Martin was like, all right, I'm getting too predictable. I need to shake things up here. Friedemann Finderson from Germany has figured me out.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, there was something she interviewed like a year or so ago where she was referring to evil pop, which is kind of like I think she was referring to it as like super dark, super heavy, and usually about like very intense things like revenge or anger, or like I'm the best there ever was. And so she was kind of down talking that and referring to it as evil pop. But then on this album, she like, in some cases tongue in cheek, but in many other cases, musically and lyrically, she kind of indulges in it and kind of goes for that sort of thing. And it was really interesting to see. It felt like maybe a couple years ago, she would never have been able to predict herself releasing such an album, especially with some of the lyrical content, like the sexuality and the dress and the multiple references to alcohol. And I mean, singing about boyfriends isn't anything new for her, but singing about revenge, apart from Bad Blood, I mean, and she sings about, like, her enemies. And she does sing about, like, beating them up or winning, but it's usually kind of like in this, like, underdog sort of way, like in Mean and a couple of others where she sings, like, you took advantage of me for long enough, but I will have my day, or I'm having my day now. And you always root for her because she is the underdog, but in this one, she's, like, firmly saying, like, nope, I kind of win by default because compared to me, you're like such an ant.
Yeah. And
she kind of gets into that evil pop, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess time will tell to see whether I got to know what her next album's going to be now. I got to know what's the character arc here, because this doesn't feel like the end of the story. It feels like there's got to be something more coming.
I could imagine her kind of going back just a little bit. Like I don't think she's going to go even darker on the next one. I think it's going to go back just slightly, because I think this one was just really like to show that this is a big marketing move. We're changing the image. This is completely different. And with the next one, it's going to be like, and this one is a little bit more for the fans again, you know?
Well, and with her selling up, with her changing her sound a little bit and still selling 1 million records, more than 1 million records in 4 days, is just incredible.
It is, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, before we jump into whether we liked it or not, let me just shout out to my people, say, hey, check out New Year's Day if you want some really interesting lyrics. I thought that those might be some of the most interesting one. Call It What You Want was probably the most true to who she is as a person. Or at least what we think she used to be as a person. But New Year's Day lyrically is probably one of the most deep, sweet, and sentimental songs because it's not about the New Year's Eve party, the New Year's Eve kiss. It's about New Year's Day when it's time to clean up the mess of last night, and it's about still being there and a part of the relationship, even when things are less exciting and less sexy.
And it's a good lyric when even I notice that it's good lyrics. So New Year's Day was definitely lyrically my favorite of the whole album, for sure.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's great. I wish I knew more about the musical side so I could, say something smart about that. But
it's
anyway,
very standard, basic Taylor Swift. It's all one-note melodies centered around the first scale degree. So nothing too special there.
Somebody with my lack of discernment would probably enjoy it very much, is what I think you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And Call It What You Want is a little bit more interesting because it's in Mixolydian. So that I think it's not straight up major. It's a little bit more interesting than that. But I also like that song a lot. But it's definitely, those songs are definitely mostly, classic Taylor as we know her.
Yeah, and it's being referred to some people as perhaps the best song she's ever written.
Huh.
I don't
Which
know
one
how
specifically?
I feel about that
The
just
New
yet.
Year's Day or Call It What You Want?
Call It What You Want. Her Saturday Night Live performance of it was really good too. She kind of sat there with a guitar and sang it, and it was really good.
Well, I haven't seen it. I have to check it out.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I'll try to link to it in the description if I remember. If I don't, somebody tweet at me. But we got to go ahead and wrap this up. Because I unfortunately have to go and do a job today and teach some students some stuff, I guess, whatever. What overall were your feelings on the album? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you love it?
Well, first of all, I think I should say that I'm not really that invested into Taylor Swift, so whatever she does, I'm mostly going to be fine with it, and I'm looking at it from a distance, so my perspective of it is mostly from interesting. Okay, so this is what she's doing. And I'm always trying to analyze.
Like a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I look at things. I thought it was a very strong album. I didn't think there were any stinkers on it. I think all of the tracks were actually very well written and produced. And I think it was a very strong album, a lot better than I anticipated, actually. Before I listened to it, I didn't love the singles that much, but when I heard the entire album, I was like, oh, wow, there's just really great song after great song. I mean, it's obviously a big team of people that have been working on this, and you can tell, I think. I mean, they put a lot of money and time into it, as you can tell from the music videos, and I think it really shows. Yeah. And my personal favorite from the album is This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things, which I thought was just really this breakout track, and it's the one where she sounds a little bit like Amanda Palmer, and it has this section, the pre-chorus of it is untuned, which is something that we haven't heard from her that much before, I think. She it sounds deliberately a little bit off key, and that is something I really thought was cool and interesting. And I think the whole album is just really full of creative ideas. There's these small things like sections that are just sort of appear out of nowhere as that shout chorus, the second verse, and Look What You Made Me Do. And there's a bunch of things like that on this album where you think of pop music has this really strict form, and she breaks out of that here and there, just which gives her a little bit more character. And I think that was done rather well. I think it's a really, really good album. I think the 2 single tracks that were released from it maybe don't represent it best, but I think it's a really, really strong work of her, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from her.
And on the other hand, if she had released a song that represented it best, she might not have gotten as much coverage because those 2 songs were just kind of this punch in the face to everything you thought you knew about Taylor.
And I completely get why they chose those 2 songs.
Yeah.
I just don't think the album is more Taylor than I thought it was going to be.
No, fair enough. Yeah, no, that's a good point. They're definitely, and I agree with that too, because at first I was thinking Gorgeous and Call It What You Want were kind of Taylorish and Ready for It, and Look What You Made Me Do were not. And I was like, what are the rest of these songs going to be? Where are they going with this? Because I cannot predict it right now. And I think you're right. I think once I listened to the whole thing, it definitely felt more Taylorish than I was expecting. But
yeah.
I do not disagree with you. I believe it is completely of the highest quality, very well produced, very well put together. They obviously are very intentional about every single aspect of this, and they pulled it off completely. As far as whether I liked it or not, I think I would go back to what I said at the beginning of the album, and that's if you like songs about, wanting to beat down those who oppress you, or if you like songs about mysterious boyfriends, you're probably going to like this album. If not, you won't be able to connect with the subject material, even if you do really enjoy like the music. And I think that there are songs on this album for everybody. There is old Taylor and there is new Taylor. And I think even songs like Look What You Made Me Do or Ready For It begin to grow on a person. I still am not a big fan of Look What You Made Me Do, but Ready For It I thought was the worst of the singles at first. But now that I've watched like the performance and I kind of understand it more and I have more of appreciation for what that chorus represents, I think that I actually enjoy it a little bit more. There are several songs in here that are really good. If you're looking for typical Taylor lyrical depth, like there's that here. There's obviously some interesting songwriting. You can't fault Max Martin. Max Martin's got to start writing bad songs at some point, but it was not today. But ever since I read another book about him, the I don't even remember what it was. It was a great book. But I kind of always look at Max Martin.
The Hit Song Factory?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I could interview Max Martin one day, that would be like, I would quit the pop song professor and I'd be like, all right, I did what I came here to do. This was great.
Yeah, I think everyone's trying to do that, but he's being very secretive and very closed off. Yeah.
The last, I just want to tell a quick story before we go. I think you'll appreciate this. All of this semester, I've been torturing my students with my love of Taylor Swift. And, I like Taylor Swift. She's not my favorite artist, but I pretend like I like her more than I do when I'm in class, just to kind of annoy my students.
Great.
And they're great. They're from all over the country. We're in like an English class. We're just trying to get them ready for future English classes at the university. And so they have a very diverse musical taste. But I always tease them like, all right, we're going to all listen to Taylor Swift now. And so today was the first class since the album came out, and I made them listen to several songs off of it before class, and then I offered them all extra credit if they would write a paragraph with an argument about one of Taylor Swift's songs. It could be any song, but it had to be 100 words. They get some extra credit, and they had to convince me of something. So
awesome.
We'll see how that goes. Those might make an appearance in future podcasts. We'll see. But
that's great. Excited for that.
Hey, Friedemann, thanks so much for being on today.
Yeah, thank you, man.
As always, it was wonderful talking to you and learning a little bit more about the wonderful, mysterious musical side of things and being able to kind of like share our knowledge and see where the puzzle pieces fit together. Guys, don't forget to go check out the Addiction Formula on audiobook and also in hard copy if that's your preference. They're all on Amazon. We'll have links in the description. You should definitely read those. I am about to. It's going to be great. I'm very excited. I actually have a road trip coming up, and so I'm going to have that audiobook, and I'm going to be listening to it all the way there and back while April sleeps in the car. So anything else that you want to add or anything else you want to shout out?
No, I'm good.
Cool.
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's been a ton of fun, and let's do this again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, talk to you later.
Cheers. 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 Cheers.